Hey everybody, welcome back. This is HD. It is currently Thursday night, and it is actually one day before Friday, which is Christmas Eve, which I'm super excited about. As you guys all know, Christmas is the best holiday ever. If you guys don't know what Christmas is, then I guess you guys must not live in any part of the world where people exist. Or civilization or society. But if you guys do know what Christmas is, then I bet you guys are all happy to get some presents and of course give some to your loved ones and friends. Anyways, it is Thursday. It's time for the Thursday HD Daily, and this is going to be a ladder game. It is going to be a mirror matchup, Terran versus Terran. I do want to say also that I have recently been promoted to Diamond. I've been playing a lot of Terran games, Terran versus Terran, Terran versus Zerg, and Terran versus Protoss. And the games have been getting a little bit more interesting. And what I like to do is I mass as many ladder games as I can. I am on Pink Bunny, by the way. Been massing ladder games on Pink Bunny, and I want to bring the games that I think are the most interesting. I think this is the best interesting game that I played, and I'm excited to be bringing it to you guys. It is on Scrap Station, which is actually a map where most Terran players will always go for that fast air right away. In fact, in Terran versus Terran, it's almost always about getting your air out right away. Usually you get one or two Banshees out with Cloak, and you kind of harass the other Terran. You go in, you get a good scout, you kill off some SCVs, and you try to keep those Banshees alive. And then you switch off your starport and you just get mass Vikings. The Vikings primarily are there to support your tanks. The main primary core unit in Terran vs. Terran, just like in Brood War, is still the Siege Tank. But of course, the Siege Tank isn't really able to make use of its maximum range, which I believe it's 12. I might be wrong on that. That might be super long. It's either 10 or 12, one of those. So someone will correct me, I'm sure. And then I'll get like 50 thumbs up and people will say HD is retarded. So, or Pink Bunny, it's actually Pink Bunny right now. So yeah, I believe the tank, it's either 10 or 12 range, but it doesn't get to use maximum effective use of its range unless something is spotting for it. So unless you throw down a comsat, unless you have a unit out there like a Viking or a barracks, anything, even on the ground. It doesn't get use of its maximum range without a unit spotting for it. And the best unit to spot really is the Viking, because it gives you mobility in the air and it can deal with the other player's Vikings. Really, Viking is the best unit to deal with other Vikings, unless you've got like a ton of Thors. So usually Terran vs. Terran really comes down to your tanks and all your fodder units, and Vikings are really the best fodder unit for the tank because they give you that plus extra range. So it does become a battle to control the air, as well as to get that terrain advantage on the ground. It's a very, very strategical game, which you'd imagine, it's Terran versus Terran. So it's also extremely gas intensive, and you gotta get that gas rolling in super fast. And in fact, I'm actually a little bit late right now. I should have my second gas going already, and I'm actually gonna be supply blocking myself as well. So still getting used to this. Supply depot is not exactly the same as an Overlord, but unfortunately I am totally supply blocked. If you ever supply block yourself really, really badly like I am here, then the best thing to do is actually build a not just one supply depot, but build two. Which I was looking at myself, I was like, when am I going to build two? But you should build two. A lot of players will only build one when they block themselves, but you've got all that money saving up while you were blocked, and then you're just going to reach your new block capacity in a very quick amount of time. So build two. It helps, make up for the difference. And yeah, so I got two depots coming right now, and I am getting my second refinery very, very late. Usually Terran versus Terran, you want to get that second gas before your second supply depot. So you actually want to get it around the time your factory comes up, maybe even before that. Because, like I said, TVT is all about getting that gas intensive starport out and getting those Banshees early on to harass and scout, and then getting your Vikings out. So I'm actually really, really delayed right now, and I remember scouting my opponent in the beginning, and I actually noticed that he got his gas before his barracks. So his buildings are so much faster than mine that I'm actually forced to throw up my engineering bay and get a missile turret in my mineral line. The reason for this is because I'm just so far behind in my starport that at this point in the game, it's almost not worth getting my starport out early on. And just it might even be better just to play more of a macro game. So as you guys can see, I'm actually getting another command center. I'm throwing up missile turrets to play defensive, and of course I'm just pumping out of my current structures right now. I'm not going to try to take control of the skies yet. And this may or may not hurt me in the late game. Obviously, I'm going to be safe against Banshees because I've got turrets. But when the mid game and late game come with the tanks and the what I was talking about in the beginning with the Vikings and your fodder units, this may actually hurt me quite a bit. Now, this scan actually revealed an armory, which kind of was a little weird to me because usually Terrans don't get armory this early on. So I was thinking, he might actually be trying to do some kind of a all-in Thor push on me. Which, you know, it can work in Terran versus Terran. It's usually very effective on short maps like Steppes of War. And of course, usually they'll put the factory somewhere near your base. So I was a little caught off guard seeing an armory and not seeing a starport when I scanned. And so I was thinking right here, you know, I might have to play a little more defensive, get up some more units, throw out a second barracks, and just pump a lot of units that can deal with a Thor in case he tries to attack me with an early Thor. So right now I'm just pretty much building up my forces. I'm a little bit, of course, like I said, weary about a possible Thor. I also want to let you guys know that if you guys are a Terran player, please do take my advice with a grain of salt. Everything I say, of course. I would say I'm about, like I said, 1500, 1800 Terran. Not the best, and TVT obviously not a matchup I'm too familiar with. But it looks like I am going to see this SCV at the Watchtower doing a little bit of a scoot and shoot micro there, which is a very useful ability to have. If you guys, it's very easy to do. You just right click, move, and then A left click, and you just do that every time the attack animation ends, and it lets you make sure that you can kill an SCV without having it, you know, run away and then you not getting the kill. So it looks like I do see a Thor there, but curiously enough, it is just chilling at the ramp. So I'm thinking now he's probably used that Thor to fast expand, kind of a security Thor. It's kind of like the Guardian Angel. And so I dropped the scan. I see now that he did indeed go for his natural, and he is a little bit ahead of me right now. I'm actually somewhat behind. So I'm playing a little bit of catch up right now in this TVT matchup, but I know that I probably have more attacking units, and this goes in all matchups, Zerg, Protoss, and Terran. If you got your expansion later than your opponent, and he just got that expansion up, I scanned and I saw that he just barely got it up and running, most likely, rather than not, you have more attacking units. And obviously I've got all these structures that I've been pumping this entire time. So if you've got more attacking units and your opponent is ahead because he just got his natural up before you did, then and you have more attacking units, it's a good time to attack. So obviously you attack because you have more units, and obviously you're attacking because he's ahead of you economically. You have to put some kind of dent into him and try to catch up in that manner. It's best to do it this way rather than just sit back and try to macro up. Obviously, you're never going to win the game against an equally skilled player in that position. So I'm going to go ahead and siege up my tanks. It's important to spread them out just a little bit. This helps me in case I need to fall back. And of course it helps against other tanks and their splash damage. So you spread out your tanks a little bit. I have all my barracks and my factories rallied over to my forward position. And of course back at home, just making sure I macro. And I actually don't have everyone working gas. The gas in Terran vs. Terran is super important. It's the most limiting resource of all time in TVT, because you need all that gas for those very, very gas intensive tanks, and of course all your other units. So it looks like he does have a tank up there, and as you guys can see, I cannot see his tanks right now. Well, A, because he's on the high ground, and B, because I don't have that extra bonus +1 range that's granted by a fodder unit in the front. So because of that, I'm gonna have to fall back. I can't really be aggressive, but my attack right here probably forced him to, you know, cut his macro a little bit, maybe make a few more attacking units than he would have preferred to. And so I think the damage was done a little bit, and I was able to do a little bit of catch up with that attack. And obviously with Terran units you can repair, so if you suffer a little bit, sustain a little bit of damage, bring a couple SCVs, set them on auto repair, and you know, a minute later all your mech will be fine and dandy once again. So I do realize at this point that my starport, watching this video, I do realize that my starport is super late. If you guys play Terran vs. Terran, and I was talking about this entire cast, I was talking about how important getting that starport is and getting those Vikings out are, you guys probably realize how late my starport is. So I'm just going to swap the starport right with the barracks that already had the reactor and try to catch up in Viking count. I know my opponent already has some Vikings because I saw them in the last attack, and I know that if he has more Vikings than me and he's able to control the skies, it doesn't matter how many more tanks I have. He's just going to be able to push me with that +1 range from the Vikings, and he's going to be able to take me out. So I have to catch up in Vikings. I have to get more. But unfortunately, I am supply blocked somewhat right now. It looks like my opponent is going to attack, and here I'm going to have to stim, push forward, and try to take out as many tanks as I can. But my opponent wisely bringing up a couple of Marines. Looks like they got obliterated. And of course, as you guys can see, the scan is my fodder unit at this point, trying to get that +1 range. But as soon as the scan runs out, I will be in the dark. And of course, I will have to fall back. And you guys can see my opponent has those Vikings, which is granting him that huge advantage. So right now, I'm definitely in a lot of trouble. I don't have map control. I'm contained inside my base, and I can't actually even grab my third right now. And of course, that means my opponent can easily grab his third expansion. So things are looking pretty bleak for me right now. And it looks like my opponent is actually going to do the riskiest maneuver in the book, which is landing the Vikings in the mineral line. And the reason actually why this is risky is because if I had any Vikings and I had perched them overhead, as soon as he tried to get away by lifting off, my Vikings would have actually gotten a couple extra shots before his would. So that's a very risky maneuver in TvT, but it can pay off a lot if you know your opponent, like me, didn't have any Vikings out. So right now I'm actually suffering quite a bit, and I'm forced into this very, very contained position. And I can't really even lift off my third command center, which is built, as you guys can see on the mini-map. But it's built up there, but I can't even lift it off to land it. So things are looking pretty bad. And really the only way to catch up if you're in this kind of position is to either try to out-pump Vikings. As you guys can see, that's not looking too good right now. Or you try to just mass up attacking units and then push out and try to break his contain. And to do that, you have to push up with your tanks all at once, stim all of your bio units, and then siege up your tanks once they're in range. It's a very, very bold maneuver. You're usually going to lose a lot of forces, and you won't really come out on top unless you have more army than he does, and I mean at least 2 times more. So things are definitely looking bad right now, and this is really showing how that air control plays such a huge role in Terran versus Terran. In fact, if I was my opponent right now, he's been playing quite well actually, but if I was my opponent right now, there's his contain, I would actually have moved in all of my Vikings and try to take out all of mine, because he's got so many, and then once he's got air control, he can easily take out my tanks with his own tanks. But here we go, looks like my opponent is going to be coming in with some of his Vikings. Looks like he was reading my cast right here, and he's going to be able to pick off all of my Vikings except for one last one. And really, this situation is getting so bad, I've decided to just go ahead and try to land this command center and try to distance mine from whatever SCVs and mules that I can pump out from that command center. But obviously, things are looking pretty bad. As you guys can see, my opponent takes out my front tanks. I cannot see those tanks. Those are in the fog of war. And so now I've decided, you know what, I've got to lift my factory up. I've got to try to get that vision so that my tanks can shoot. But my tank's still out of range. So yeah, even the factory lifting off isn't helping too much at this point, as you guys can tell. Those Vikings, which are providing the range for his tanks, are actually also doing quite a bit of damage to my factory now in the orange. So yeah, if you're in this kind of situation and you're a Terran player, you know things are bad. You know that your opponent's got you cornered in the back. And you've really got only a couple things that you can do. Like I said, you've got 2 options. Either all-out attack or try to out-macro him and get more Vikings. Really, if I can just get enough Vikings, more than him, then I can easily win this fight, because I'll be able to punch through all of his air, and then I can slowly push out 1 unit at a time, 1 little range piece at a time, that 12 range to 11 range, or whatever it is. It's 1 extra range. So really, that's showing that how important these Vikings really are in Terran vs. Terran. And because I fell behind, my opponents have been able to take advantage of it, and he's a great Terran player. He's been playing very solidly. And also, you guys saw that I scanned his 3rd expansion. As soon as he gets his SCVs mining there, that's going to be 3 base to 2 base, and that's when the macro is just going to become another factor for me to deal with, where my opponent's going to have more units, more income. So yeah, I'm just going to risk it. Going to try to mule up here and hope my opponent doesn't catch it. Obviously, since he's using the shortcut here on Scrap Station, I might have a chance. And I am trying to get another starport out here. The reason for this is because I know I'm behind in production, and I know he's about to get his third base up. So my strategy here was to get some dropships out, but I didn't want to cut into my Viking production, so I decided to build another starport, get the reactor from another dropship, and try to get some dropships and do some backstab play. That's the other thing you can do if you're in this position. It looks like my opponent's got some tanks here. He's taking the liberty to take the high ground. He's shelling my natural, and I'm going to try to whittle some of his Vikings away as his forces were split apart. But unfortunately, I lose my command center. So that is actually my only mining expansion, really. And he just took it out with tanks. I should have lifted off. That was a big blunder. So now I'm pretty much down to my final option, which is all-out push. And like I said before, if you don't have a lot of forces, then you're gonna lose quite a bit. In fact, you need almost double the amount of army he's got, and you have to execute this very perfectly. So here we go, gonna try to push out, dropping the scan so I can get my tanks a little more vision. And of course, I've moved the tanks up and re-sieged them, and it looks like I was able to kill off all of his Vikings. But unfortunately, he's still got more tanks. And another mistake there, landing my dropships into no man's land. So, and of course, all the while, my opponent still has his tanks in the back of my natural. So I'm going to bring my SCVs to fight now. And as you guys can see, that all-out attempt, while it was my last hurrah, my last try, it didn't work out all that well. And of course, my opponent still has a crap ton of tanks. So I was actually going to try my final attack there, which was my dropship backstab to his third, but ran into a bunch of Vikings. So that is going to be GG. And, you know, I tried every single avenue of attack I could, every single way to get back in the game. And really, if you're down like that, that's the only thing you can do. A lot of times people would just GG out when they think they've lost, but that's not always the case. So there's my opponent, 2000 ranked Terran. Very, very good Terran player. And I hope you guys enjoyed that broadcast. I thought it was an interesting game because it really showcases how dynamic and how strategic TvT really is. It's all about those fodder units. I've said it over and over again, but I can't emphasize it enough. You know, I understood it, but once I actually played it, it really does bring a new appreciation to Terran versus Terran. So hopefully you guys see it the way I see it now. A very interesting and dynamic matchup. And requires quite a bit of skill to play. So that is going to be the Thursday HD Daily. Tomorrow is Christmas Eve. I think I'll be casting a special game tomorrow. And I think I'll be sticking to the Monday through Thursday schedule for the daily. So tomorrow will be a pro cast. And I think I'm going to be doing a very, very interesting game. So hopefully you guys stay tuned. And that's going to be it for me. Good Terran versus Terran game. I got outplayed by my opponent, Ginseng, who's a very solid Terran player. So that's going to be it for me. Thanks a lot for staying tuned and subscribing. Merry Christmas to all, and to all a new happy good year. HD, signing out.